two neighbors with nuclear weapons on the brink of war. India carrying out its deepest strikes inside Pakistan in more than 50 years.
We are committed to take firm and decisive action against terrorists and those who support them.
China's role is very interesting here. On one hand is their iron brotherhood with Pakistan. On the other is the reset with India amid the trade war with the US. What does China value more?
India has just unleashed hell on Pakistan. Over the past few hours, dozens, if not hundreds, of missiles flew across the skies and blew up at least 9 terror-linked locations across Pakistan and Pakistani-occupied Kashmir. But you know what's crazy? This isn't even Pakistan's biggest nightmare right now. It's China. Xi Jinping dreaded this exact moment ever since Pakistan pulled off a horrific terrorist attack against India. You see, on April 22nd, 2025, 5 heavily armed terrorists carrying M4 cartridges and AK-47s quietly crossed into Indian territory and entered Pahalgam, a well-known tourist spot in Kashmir. Just like the attacks we saw in Israel, where civilians were deliberately hunted down, these men went after Hindu civilians, targeting them deliberately and murdering dozens in cold blood. They stopped tourists one by one and forced them to prove they were Muslim by reciting a Quranic verse. If someone passed, they were let go. If not, they were ordered to pull down their pants to check if they were circumcised, a practice common among Muslims but not the Hindu community. Those who failed both tests, mostly Hindu men, were executed on the spot. Their wives, children, and friends were made to watch. And now they're left with a kind of trauma that never leaves. And that's exactly why India isn't holding back anymore. They're retaliating with raw vengeance. And whether China likes it or not, it will be dragged into this. Because if it doesn't step in, the hundreds of billions it has poured into Pakistan won't just go up in flames, so will its entire South Asian strategy. If that wasn't bad enough, Pakistan's military heavily relies on Chinese-made weapons, most of which haven't faced a single real-world conflict intense enough to genuinely test if they perform as effectively as China claims. This ongoing conflict is the first true battlefield test for Beijing's military technology, and by the looks of it, things aren't going well. Chinese-supplied radar and missile defense systems have utterly failed to protect Pakistani airspace, allowing India to hit every intended target, one terrifyingly close to Lahore itself. Even more humiliating, a Chinese-made JF-17 Thunder, an advanced 4th-generation fighter jet, has already been shot down. That's an enormous embarrassment for both Islamabad and Beijing. So if this conflict blows up into a full-scale war, no one's going to care who started it. The blame game will end, and the chain reaction will begin. Everyone with even a shred of influence, near or far, will be pulled into it, and China will be at the front of that line. Now, of course, YouTube is not a fan of war-related topics, and CCP bots are not a fan of videos that criticize the CCP. So in this video, we need your help more than ever. If you can hit that like and subscribe button down below, it really does help us out with this YouTube algorithm. Okay, let's start. Now, we all know that China and Pakistan like to call themselves all-weather Iron Brother allies. This deep bond began in 1951, when Pakistan was one of the first Muslim nations to recognize the new People's Republic of China. Since then, Beijing has poured loads of cash into Islamabad, to the point where today, 1/3 of Pakistan's entire external debt, roughly $30 billion, is owed to Chinese state banks and commercial lenders, making Beijing by far Pakistan's biggest creditor. If we're being honest, China couldn't care less about Pakistan's stability or long-term prosperity. For the CCP, Pakistan is nothing more than a strategic cash cow. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC, is exactly how they milk it. CPEC is a $62 billion mega project at the very heart of China's Belt and Road Initiative. It includes a massive network of highways, railroads, fiber optic communication cables, power plants, and industrial parks, all linking Kashgar and China's Xinjiang province directly to Pakistan's deepwater port of Gwadar on the Arabian Sea. China has secured a 40-year lease that gives it control over the Gwadar port, letting Beijing pocket around 90% of all the revenue generated. Meanwhile, Pakistan is left scrambling for whatever's left. The crazy part is, China has cunningly structured these contracts in a way that makes it almost impossible for Pakistan to ever realistically pay back the huge loans tied to these projects. Basically, the terms are stacked completely against Pakistan from day one. Chinese firms were handed huge equity stakes, generous long-term leases, and guaranteed payments. On top of that, Pakistan even agreed to purchase the electricity generated from CPEC power plants at extremely high, fixed rates. which they're legally obligated to pay, no matter what happens to their economy. In fact, some of these agreements openly promise Chinese investors massive returns, as much as 34.5% every single year. With terms like these, it's clear that sooner or later, Pakistan will be completely overwhelmed by debt. Eventually, they'll have no choice but to hand over full control and permanent rights to critical infrastructure like ports, power plants, and highways directly to China. It's a classic debt trap, and one that's already caught dozens of other countries in its net. But China isn't just in this for quick cash or massive returns. The real benefit China gets from CPEC goes way beyond just money. It also provides China with an incredibly important alternative shipping route, one that lets Chinese oil tankers and cargo ships completely bypass the narrow and vulnerable Strait of Malacca. Right now, about 80% of China's imported oil passes through this strait, which the US Navy, or regional rivals like India, could block off in a military confrontation or a geopolitical crisis. That's exactly why the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, is so strategically important. It gives China a critical backup route, dramatically reducing this vulnerability. India knows this, and that's precisely why, if China tried to intervene or send military support to Pakistan, then CPEC would instantly become India's #1 military target. To justify this attack, India has already openly declared the entire corridor a violation of its territorial sovereignty, because it runs right through land India officially claims as its own. Gwadar Port, the southern endpoint of CPEC, is especially concerning for India, as New Delhi suspects it will soon serve as a Chinese naval base. To fully understand just how vulnerable China really is here, let's take a close look at this map. The CPEC corridor begins right here, in China's Xinjiang region. From there, it crosses into Pakistan through a narrow mountainous pass known as the Punjab Pass. After that, it heads straight down into Gilgit-Baltistan, a highly sensitive region that India officially claims as part of its Jammu and Kashmir state. So basically, this Chinese-funded project cuts right through territory that's already deeply disputed. To India, it's an open insult and a direct challenge to its authority. Now, with the conflict already underway, the billions China poured into CPEC might soon become worthless. India could immediately launch an offensive to take back what it firmly considers its own territory, instantly turning the entire northern half of the CPEC into an active war zone. China knows this danger perfectly well. That's exactly why they've already stationed thousands of soldiers throughout this sensitive area, desperately trying to guard their investments and keep control. But honestly, even with those troops in place, if an actual war breaks out, none of that will really matter. Those billions of dollars China spent building highways, power plants, and infrastructure would instantly become sitting ducks, each within direct range of Indian artillery, missiles, and fighter jets. And we're not talking about hypothetical long-range strikes here. These locations could be hit with deadly accuracy in mere minutes. As for Pakistan, despite heavily relying on Chinese cash and military support, they're already failing to defend these vulnerable projects. Pakistan's economy is collapsing, and its military is stretched dangerously thin. With Indian strikes already hitting targets deep inside of Pakistan, Beijing is now facing an urgent decision: step in directly with its own forces to safeguard billions of dollars in investments, or risk losing everything. But as you'll soon see, that's actually extremely unlikely, and I'll explain exactly why in just a bit. But first, let's move a bit further down south on our map. Because as messy as things look up north, the situation down here in Balochistan is actually even worse for China. Now, if you haven't heard much about Balochistan, don't worry, you're definitely not alone. Most people haven't. But let me quickly explain why this region matters so much right now. Just like the conflict in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir we discussed up north, the troubles in Balochistan also began around the very birth of Pakistan itself back in 1947. Back then, when British India was being divided into India and Pakistan, Balochistan wasn't even fully sure it wanted to be a part of the newly created Pakistani state. You see, before Pakistan officially became a country, a big part of what is today called Balochistan belonged to a separate princely state known as Kalat. The ruler there, known as the Khan of Kalat, initially had no interest in joining Pakistan at all. He wanted complete independence for his region. But Pakistan had completely different plans. Under heavy pressure from Islamabad, the Khan of Kalat eventually gave in and officially agreed to join Pakistan in 1948. Not everyone agreed with this decision, though. In fact, the Khan's own brother, a man named Prince Abdul Karim, rebelled immediately. Abdul Karim fled across the border into neighboring Afghanistan, gathering local fighters, and quickly launched the very first armed rebellion against Pakistan in July of 1948. That rebellion set the stage for decades of ongoing tensions and conflicts that continue right up to today. Now, at this point, you're probably all wondering, why exactly are the people in Balochistan still fighting nearly 80 years later? Well, there are a few important things you need to know first. To start off, Balochistan is huge. It's actually Pakistan's largest province by far, covering more than 40% of the entire country's land area. It's also loaded with huge reserves of natural gas, massive copper mines, gold deposits, oil fields, I mean, you name it. Balochistan probably has it somewhere underground. Yet despite sitting on all this immense wealth, the people living there are some of the poorest in the entire country. To put this into perspective, even though